Hi everyone, welcome to another video on using Excel. This video introduces us to a very important concept and a function called if. The concept of if has wide applications in programming, spreadsheet calculations, different queries, and in general in any area that relies on conditional logic. Now bear in mind that the syntax will be different from one application to the other. Let's quickly take a look at how this works. So in general, if you take a look at Excel, the if function is specified in this way. So this is the syntax of if. If will be followed within the brackets by condition. The condition can take multiple forms. Generally, it's some sort of a relational operator, but it can also be a combination of different relational operators. What these relational operators are, we can take a look at that shortly. However, the important thing to realize in the syntax of if is that initially there's a condition. If the condition turns out to be true, then what this function returns, or what the function does, is x. And if the condition turns out to be false, then what the function does is y. One way to also look at this is to understand this visually. If you take a look at this section here, so if whatever the condition is, if it turns out to be true, then it will do x, and if it turns out to be false, it will do y. So let's take a look at an example here. So here we have an example of a if function. So this function says that if x is greater than y, then add x and y. If on the other hand, if that is not true, then subtract y from x. So let's see what this means. So in the first case, where x is 6 and y is 7, what do you think? Would the condition be satisfied? So the condition will not be satisfied. In this case, what this function will do will be x minus y, which will be 6 minus 7, and the answer we can expect to get from this is -1. Let's take a look at the next one. When x is 10 and y is 7, is the condition fulfilled? Yes, the condition is fulfilled because x is greater than y. In this case, it will add them up. So the answer we can expect is going to be 10 plus 7, which is 17. Let's take a look at the third case. When x is 10 and y is 10, will the condition be satisfied? We can clearly see that x is not greater than y in this case. In other words, the condition is not satisfied, and we can expect the function to do an x minus y, which is 10 minus 10. In other words, the answer you can expect from this function is going to be 0. So that is how if function generally works. You always start off the function by specifying a condition or a combination of conditions. If that condition is satisfied, what you can expect is the second parameter, which is x, and if it is false or is not satisfied, then what you can expect is the third parameter, y. Now, before we move on, a quick word on why is this so important. Now, remember that the if statement has a lot of functionality, even in programming languages, generally, regardless of whichever language you look at. You will see it will have one flavor or the other of the if function. The only difference is it is generally referred to as the if statement, and the way you can expect to see it is in the format given right here. So there'll be an if statement followed by a condition, and if that condition is satisfied, it executes a part of the code demonstrated here by x, and if it doesn't work, then it goes to the else part of the code and does the y. Having said that, what do we mean by condition? Now, the condition can be a lot of different things, but what you will commonly encounter is going to be conditions which are relational operators. These are very common relational operators, like equal to. This is how Excel denotes equal to, not equal to, greater than, less than, greater than equal to, or less than equal to. It is also very common to see that these relational operators are often joined together with Boolean combinations of and, or, and not as well. Okay, let's quickly take a look at an example of this function in play. So here we have a problem. We'll try and solve that by using the if function within Excel. So there's a bank that is offering attractive loans at competitive interest for its own employees. For retail customers or customers of the bank, it offers a loan at 10%. However, if its own employees want to take advantage of the loan, or if they apply for the loan is given to them at 7%. Given the principal, and that's something we have in column E, calculate the interest for the first year. So how would this work? So in general, given the principal, what we would do is, in order to calculate the interest, what we can do here is, we see that this is a bank employee. Bank employee is going to be given a loan at 7%. So we can multiply it by 7%, and that tells us the interest amount that we can expect for this principal loan. The next one is retail customer. So for the retail customer, we again see that the interest is given at 10%. So let's take it at 10%, and that gives us the interest for the retail customer. Let's do another one. This is again a retail customer, and again their interest rate is 10%, and that is what we can expect. But wait, again, remember that if there are 3 or 4 lines, or if maybe about 10 lines, you could do this like this manually. But then if you expect a lot of data, then this is simply not worth it. It's not worth the effort, and it would not be practical. This is where a conditional statement like if, or a conditional function in this case, like if, would be extremely powerful and can frankly do a lot. So let's take a look at how if would function in this case. So to formulate this, what we can do here is a statement like this. We can say that if the role that we have here, if the role is that of a bank employee, if the role is that of a bank employee, then give me the interest, which will be the principal. And remember that for the bank employee, the interest rate is at 7%. So we mentioned 7% here. However, if D9 equal to bank employee is false, which means the role is not a bank employee, in this case, given this table, it would mean that the role will be that of a retail customer. Then in that case, give me the principal multiplied by 10%. Remember, 10% is the interest rate that's been given to the retail customers. All right. So again, remember the syntax of if, the first part right here, this is the condition part. If the condition is true, then do E9 into 7%, which is 7% of the principal. If the condition is false, which means the role is not a bank employee, it's a retail customer, then do E9 into 10%. Let's see if this works. Now it gives us 631.96. Let's also calculate this manually to see if it truly worked. There we are. It's an exact match. All right. Now let's go ahead and drag it one more cell. So for this one, it says the interest is going to be $805.40. Let's see if this is manually the case. This is a retail customer. We can apply 10%, and we can clearly see that it matches as well. Now let's drag it across. There we are. In one single step, using the conditionals, using the if function, we've been able to get the information. And in this case, as you can see, depending upon whether the condition is satisfied or not, it gives us the correct interest rate by applying differential interest rates of either 10% or 7% basis the rule. That's a rather neat trick. This is a very useful method of applying differential formulas depending upon whether the condition is satisfied or not. Okay, so you've already seen one simple example of if here. Now remember that in the past, in the other videos, we also seen variants of the use of if in cojoined format with other functions like COUNTIF, SUMIF, AVERAGEIF. Be sure to check out those applications of COUNTIF, SUMIF, AVERAGEIF as well, just to refresh your memory. Moving on to the next example, and this will be another interesting one. So we have another problem here. So let's take a look at what this is. So there's an oil company. This oil company wants to maximize their sales so that they can increase their sales basically. And they've come up with an attractive scheme for the wholesalers. So the scheme is as the following. So the company in general sells gasoline per gallon at the rate of $4. However, what the company's done here is they've come up with a scheme according to which if a wholesaler buys more than 500 gallons, then for every extra gallon above $500, it'll only cost them $3. So basically, they're getting a discount of $1 for every extra gallon above $500. Now, the requirement here is create a formula such that for any quantity of oil in gallons, it can calculate the correct price for the wholesalers. Now, here, the objective is that whatever is mentioned here in terms of the gallons of oil, the cost of purchase should be populated in this cell in B9. Now, before we start constructing this, let's understand this fully. So let's deal with this in terms of a range and a cost. Let's do this manually. Let's get the hang of it, and then we can start applying the if function to this concept. So it seems like anything which is less than equal to 500 gallons is going to cost $4, right? Now, what if it's above $500? So let's say it is 550 gallons. In case it's 550 gallons, it's going to cost $4 for the first 500 gallons, and then it's going to cost $3 for the next 50 gallons. This is what we need to get. So let's look at how the formula would work for the cost. The cost that we can expect in this case is going to be, so let's take some concrete values here. So let's say the quantity is, let's say, 470 gallons. And out here, let's take a look at the cost. The cost for 470 gallons will be 470 times 4. This will be the cost for 470 gallons. Now let's say the quantity is 550 gallons. How would this work in this case? In this case, the first 500 gallons will be at $4 as is specified in the question. However, the next 50 gallons will be at $3 only. So as we can see here, depending upon the quantity which is being bought, you have different formulas. And that's where if can be very useful for us. So now that we understand that for different quantities, as you can see here, the formula is simply multiplying the quantity by 4 to get the cost. Here it's not that simple. First you have to break up the quantity into two parts. First part is the 500 gallons, and the second part is whatever is excess of 500 gallons, and then multiplied by 3. So let's go ahead and try to construct the formula here. So we say that if this quantity right here is less than equal to 500 gallons, if the quantity of oil purchased is less than equal to $500, what do we want a formula to be? In that case, we want the quantity of oil purchased to be multiplied by $4 to give us the cost. All right. But what if this condition is not true? Let's say this condition is false, which is the quantity of oil is greater than 500 gallons. Then what? Then in that case, what we would expect is that the first 500 gallons is sold at $4. And then whatever is the excess above $500 is sold at $3, right? This is what the construct would be. The first 500 at $4 and the excess above 500 at $3. All right. Now, however, Excel at this stage will still not recognize the line, the phrase excess above 500. So we'll have to give it a mathematical formulation. So how do we get the excess above 500? So the excess above 500 would be the original quantity minus 500. This will give us the quantity of oil in gallons above $500. And multiplied by 3, it will give us, or it should give us, the right cost. All right, let's see if the function works as per our expectation. Let's say somebody purchases 100 gallons. Now, 100 gallons at $4 a piece is going to be $400. And there we are. The cost is correct. What about $200? Goes to $800 because it's $4 per gallon. You do it at 500 gallons, it becomes $2,000. Okay. In fact, let's quickly check what we manually calculated here, which is when the quantity is $470, the cost turned out to be $18.80. Let's see. Let's change this to 470. There we are. So far, it's worked just fine. But now we have the acid test. What happens when it goes above 500? So let's take the example of 501 gallons. Let's say a wholesaler has bought 501 gallons. Now, what do we expect? We expect that the first 500 to be at $4 a piece, which makes it $2,000. And that one extra gallon is going to be at $3. So ideally, it should cost $2,003. Let's see. Let's see if that actually works for us or not. There we are. It's an absolute match. And as a final test, let's see what happens when we enter 550 gallons in the quantity. Do we get the right cost? There we are. We have 2,150, which is an exact match. This is the power of the if function. Depending upon whether certain conditions are satisfied or not, you can use different formulations to deal with each aspect. If it's true, you can do one thing. If it's not true, you can do something else, depending upon the scenario or the situational requirement or the business problem you're trying to solve. Okay, so we've covered a lot about the if function or the if statement, but that's not it. There's something even more important and powerful about the if function that we should definitely keep in mind. So we'll only get introduced to this idea today. And that is something known as a nested if. We have alluded to this in the past in a previous video where we said that often what you can do is you can chain or you can nest functions together where the output of one function becomes the input of another, or when you nest a function, so using one function, you're using the same function inside itself in a certain way. So let's see what a nested if is and how can it be useful for us. So this is an extension of the same problem that we just looked at, which is there's an oil company which wants to maximize their sales. So they've come up with an attractive scheme for the wholesalers. The oil company has set the price of a gallon of gasoline at $4. However, if a wholesaler buys more than 500 gallons, then for every extra gallon above $500, it'll cost the wholesaler $3 only. And you'll notice that this problem so far is a replica of the problem that we dealt with in the last example. But it goes beyond it. It says that if the wholesaler buys in excess of 1,000 gallons, then for every extra gallon above 1,000 gallons will cost them $2 per gallon. Okay, so this is a slightly more twisted tale. Let's try and understand what this really means before we construct that formula within Excel. So let's take the example of 1,001 gallons. So what do we expect? If it is 1,001 gallons, or in fact, let's start off with the simpler case. If it is 500 gallons, then we expect the cost to be 500 gallons, $4 a piece, right there. Okay. If it is, let's say, 750 gallons, then what we would expect is that the first 500 of the 750 is going to be at $4 a piece, and the remaining 250 gallons will be at $3, right? And that would be the right cost. If it is 1,000 gallons, what happens then? If it is 1,000 gallons, then the first 500 is being sold for $4, and the next 500 gallons is being sold for $3. That should be the price. Now, the moment this turns above 1,000 gallons, so let's say it becomes 1,001 gallon, then in that case, the way this should work is that the first 500 gallons should be at $4, the next 500 should be at $3, and the extra gallon above 1,000 should be at $2. This is what we expect. Let's take another example. Let's say it is 1,010 gallons. Here, the first 500 is going to be at $4, the next 500 will be at $3, and then the last 10 gallons that we just saw is going to be at $2 a piece, right? So now we have done this by hand. Now let's try and construct the equivalent if function formulation right here. Okay, so let's begin. So if the first condition, if the quantity being purchased is less than equal to $500, then we simply want to multiply the quantity by 4. This is similar to what we saw in the last example. However, if it is not less than equal to 500, let's say it's higher than 500. Now, remember that here we have two splits. So we have to consider the range from 500 to 1,000, but then we need to have a different formulation above 1,000. And this is where nested if will be a very important principle. So to deal with two of these scenarios, what we'll do here is we'll insert another if and put in the next condition, which is if quantity purchased is less than equal to 1,000 gallons. Then the way we want this to be calculated is that the first 500 gallons is at $4, and the excess above 500, which we now know will be calculated as quantity purchased minus 500, which gives us the excess above 500 times 3. All right. And then we come to the final part of the formulation. So what if this condition also fails? Which means the quantity is greater than 1,000. If the quantity is greater than 1,000, then the way we would want to formulate is that the first 500 gallons goes at $4 a piece. The next $500 goes at $3 a piece. And then the excess above 1,000 goes at $2. And how do we get the excess? Same concept. The total quantity minus 1,000 gives us the excess. And this then needs to be multiplied by 2. Once we're done with this, we'll close the inner if. And then we have to close the outer if. Now let's see. Let's try this and see what do we get here. So using the same table that we just had created manually out here, let's enter the values and compare. So at 500 gallons, we get $2,000, which is the right amount. Let's check for 750, 2750. Let's try 1,000. We get 3,500. This is accurate. By 1,001, we get 3,502. And let's try 1,010. And there we are. We have the exact precise match to what we had calculated by hand. Now let's revisit this very important concept. As you can see here, we have used two if functions. There's a outer if and an inner if. And one pattern begins to emerge here. And the way you might want to think about this pattern is, so let's write it down. Let's say range and the number of if functions. Now you might recall that in the previous example, we only had to deal with two ranges from 0 till 500 and above 500. So when you have two ranges, two distinct ranges to deal with, you required one if function. But in this problem, you can see that you have three ranges. You have one calculation for 0 to 500, then you have a different calculation from 500 to 1000, and then you have a different calculation from 1000 and above. So you have three different data ranges, and each range has a different calculation method. And in this case, you required two if statements. Well, if you can't see the pattern yet, the way this works is, depending upon the number of different data ranges that you will have different formulas for, the number of if functions that you require is going to be one less. So for example, if you are dealing with a problem which had four different data ranges and each range had a different calculation methodology, you will then in that case require three if statements, three nested ifs, similar to the example that we just looked at. So this, guys, is a very, very important and powerful concept. In the past, there was a restriction that you could only nest 7 if statements, one inside the other, but I think that restriction has kind of gone away. But I'm not sure of this. You will have to check that out on your own to see if you can nest more than 7 if statements within the same function. All right. I hope this was a instructional and helpful video. That brings us to the end of this one. Thank you so much for watching. See you next time.